Good morning. I'm Sergeant Robert Horton, United States Army Special Operations. I was a psychological operations specialist from 1999 to 2012, and I'm also a son of the American Revolution. Now, everyone is wondering about this Russell J. Gould and David Wynn Miller story, and everybody wants to know what in the world is going on with that. What does it mean, right? Okay, but to understand what it means, you have to understand what's going on planet Earth that you all need to be made aware of so you can understand what it is these guys are talking about, okay? So I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is a very old Masonic system that's operating here on planet Earth, and it is all based upon shipping and postal wars that have morphed into banking wars. Okay, so the three really work together hand in hand, but the banking warfare has really kicked off here as of late in relation to this whole thing. So when you're born here on this planet, or here on this planet, you are born of the water, right? Because this is a shipping war. You're all captured in a shipping warfare that you're unaware of, that you've been captured into. So when you're born of your mother's water. And you are docked as a vessel by a doctor who is a registered harbor master by the port authorities and authorized by the Department of Transportation. And when you are docked by the doctor, you are then harbored in the harbor in a vessel in dry dock known as a hospital, which is considered to be a boat parked on the land. Okay? But when you're born and harbored by the harbor master in this vessel in dry dock, you are considered a ward of the state. So you are placed into a maternity ward. Why are you a ward of the state? Because you have not yet been brought under the laws of this old school Masonic system. Now, how they get you into this old school Masonic system is with the birth certificate. So you're considered a ward of the state or an outlaw because you're not yet under the laws of the old Masonic system until your mother signs a birth certificate. This is a commercial instrument, okay? This is saying that you are now owned and under the laws of this Masonic system, but you are owned and that you are nothing more than a piece of cargo or a vessel or a dead person that's presumed to be missing, dead, or lost at sea, right? Once you're legged into this massive corporate construct, and it's a global construct, you are then subject to the laws of the state. State of affairs, not state of California or state of Nevada. We're talking global state of affairs. You're legged into the state.
It's in favor of the banks. It's certainly not in favor of the people. What happens when you have a child is your child is given a Social Security number. They estimate how many taxes your child is going to pay over his or her lifetime. And they take that birth certificate and they issue it on the capital markets and they earn money on it.
Once that happens, you are then under the laws of this entire global construct.
I'm saying something much worse, actually. What I'm saying is that when every citizen goes into the court system, they are not seen there as themselves a U.S. citizen. They're seen as the person who had their birth certificate pledged. You're there as a debtor. You're not there as a citizen. We have been converted from human beings that are citizens of the Republic of the United States into chattel. Chattel, that is a legal term for something which is property. We are now considered to be property of the Federal Reserve. We're not considered to be human beings and citizens of the United States.
These are the pillars of the laws of this global construct. Admiralty and Maritime, and civil jurisdiction. Law of the sea, law of the land. Law of the sea has always been held by the King of Great Britain. Okay, that's how he runs his entire country. It's considered a vessel, a great big boat, and all the people in that boat are considered to be missing, dead, or presumed lost at sea with their birth certificate system. That's how he runs his whole country. And that's the same thing we're doing here in the United States. Why? Because Great Britain has always been our postmaster general here in the colonies and the 50 states. Now let me explain what postmaster general of the world is. Okay, this is our vessel. This is planet Earth. This is the vessel that we're all floating around on in this sea of space we call the solar system or the galaxy. This is our outpost, right? Our boat. The Postmaster General, or the General of the Post, is Great Britain. Always has been. This is an old school Masonic warfare platform, planetary warfare platform based upon shipping, postal, and banking wars. Okay, I've explained the shipping to you. The postal revolves around timelines. When you're brought into a jail, the timelines kick off, whether it's a federal offense, state offense, or local offense. Different venues have different timelines, okay, and there's several. His whole system is enforced in the courts around the world. This whole system is enforced in the courts, and what they're enforcing is the elemental chart, his strategic metals contract, his styles manual, and the dictionary, which is basically the entire system all of us are using, the grammatical construct we all use. All of these contracts and this entire system is enforced in the courts around the world. Those are called the neutral ports. That's where the wars are fought in relation to this entire matter, right? If you got a grievance, you go into the courts or the neutral ports and you fight it out. But this thing is set up to make sure that he always wins, okay? This entire system is set up so that you never win. All they look at you as is a piece of cargo, a boat or a vessel that can be harvested, raped, plundered, and pillaged for its goods. So this is the old school Masonic system that these guys have set up, and this is what is being defended on planet Earth, okay? This whole system belongs to the King of Great Britain, or is run and defended by the King of Great Britain. Okay, so he is the Postmaster General of the world. All of the countries on planet Earth are utilizing and playing with this system. Okay, doesn't matter if you're in Russia, China, or Germany. If you get married here in the United States, you're still considered to be married in Russia, China, or Germany. If you get divorced, you're considered divorced all over the world, right? Because the courts are all connected. Everybody's playing this game. It's a big, old school Masonic system that they utilize to control the people and run the planet with. This is the old school monarchical system that commands and controls the entire planet, or at least is attempting to. All of the countries on planet Earth are utilizing this Masonic warfare platform, okay? And as they are all high-ranking Masons, all of them, okay? Not Masons in the form of guys who are setting up sidewalks and driveways, okay? They're not those type of Masons. These Masons build governments. They build them and they defend them. The contracts that I pointed out that the King of Great Britain has, all the countries have those same contracts. They all have their own strategic metals contract in place that allows them to print and mint their own coinage based upon their banking system, okay? Everybody has commodities that they trade around the world with each other, and that's what those banking systems are based upon. Oil being one of the biggest. And the King of Great Britain is the reigning monarch on the planet. That's why he is the Postmaster General of the world. What we're going to look at is where the crown derives its authorizations or its authorities that their entire system is based upon. Okay, real quick, let's go back and recover some American history, okay? Back when the colonies were founded, there was 13 colonies originally. And before the American Revolution broke out, our post office was the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania post office, the Benjamin Franklin post office, okay, or postal court, which is here. And once the American Revolution had broke out, the king had cut off our ability to conduct international trade and commerce out of that post office because we went to war against Great Britain, right? So the war, all wars vacate that kind of contract. So our shipping was cut off. After the American Revolution, we couldn't open commerce back up through this post office because we owed 1.6 million francs to the French for funding the American Revolution. So at that point, the King of Spain and the King of France argued over who was going to be the Postmaster General here in the United States to open it up to international trade and commerce. Right? Spain said that they had found America first. Christopher Columbus had discovered the New World first, and so they had rights to it. France said that without loaning America the 1.6 million francs, the United States wouldn't even be open for capture. But the King of Great Britain, still being the reigning monarch in the world, said those are my people, and I'm going to put my post office in up there and open this thing up to trade and commerce. You guys need to stand down. So that's how he became the Postmaster General of the United States. And the Canada location has always been attached to that postal location as well. So the King of Great Britain took tactical command and control of the entire North American continent in the process. So if the other reigning monarchs and dictators of the world wanted to come into our country, or the United States, and rape and pillage it for its natural resources and its goods, they'd have to go through him and his post office to do so. So everything that was shipped in and out of the country, all trade and commerce, he got a piece up through that post office. Just like he did down in the East Indies. He is taking tactical command and control of the movement and shipment of all goods on planet Earth. That's his end goal. Okay, now there was a long-range objective that had been placed into motion here by the Crown, the Vatican, and London City and the Rothschilds. Okay, and the reason the American Revolution had kicked off was because the United States wanted to float its currency into the global market, and because they based their monetary system on the value of the land, it never fluctuates. It's solid base, right? But the Rothschilds fluctuate gold and silver up and down in relation to what they have going on. And because our currency doesn't fluctuate, when these guys would drop the price of gold down, America could buy it up and eventually would become the global power on the planet. So the Rothschilds attacked the Crown, and the Crown said, you guys can't do that, and as a matter of fact, this is war against me, and I'm not going to let that happen. So that was the reason for the American Revolution. But the long-range objective was to get the United States to borrow money from these guys in an effort to surrender them back to Great Britain. And how that was going to work was you only get 3 chances to pay off the debt that you borrow from these guys. And if you can't pay it off, then the Crown will step in, pay the debt to these guys off for you, and then capture you back as part of his system or part of Great Britain. And you'd all become peasants and serfs again. And this entire thing revolved around the year 1999. This is an event horizon year. Not just for the United States, but for the entire planet. Okay, so when the colonies had come out of the American Revolution and the king stepped in as Postmaster General for the United States, the U.S. Constitution was drafted. Okay? And the U.S. Constitution outlined how the king's government was going to interact with the colonies in relation to international trade and commerce. Okay, and this thing was seen by Patrick Henry and the colonials as so tyrannical that they created the Bill of Rights, outlining, or I should say, laying out what it was that the King of Great Britain and that federal government, the Fed, would never have the power to infringe upon, because they knew that this king was so tyrannical, eventually he would enforce his authority into the states' territories and try to tell you what you could and couldn't say, what you could and couldn't write, right? The freedom of the press, that you couldn't bear arms, you wouldn't have the right to defend your country. So those things were all outlined here in the Bill of Rights, and those are the things the king would never have the power to infringe upon, ever. It was done. It was the only thing that ratified the U.S. Constitution. And they were not going to sign it. The colonials refused to sign it until these guys, the Fed, accepted this outline. The reason that 1999 is an event horizon year is because in 1999 was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy for the United States. And we were going to be surrendered back over to Great Britain because we couldn't afford to pay the debt to London and the Rothschilds and the 13 banking families off. But that meant that the U.S. Constitution had come to an end. It was over. It was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy, and the contract between us and Great Britain expired.
And then they incorporated the United States as a company. And they made the President of the United States the Chief Executive Officer. And they made the representatives of Congress managers. And so when people come to Congress, they're taught very quickly that their constituents are not what it's all about. What it's all about is for them to get on the dole of the federal government, which is there to enslave the people who live in the United States. That's what that is.
So what does that mean the U.S. Constitution had come to an end? Well, it was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy for the United States. And with the end of the third and final international bankruptcy, the King of Great Britain had to vacate the position as Postmaster General due to international banking law. And the trustee between us and Great Britain, or the bankruptcy, has always been the President of the United States. Well, if there's no more bankruptcy, then there's no more need for a trustee. The agreement with us and Great Britain is over. So, no bankruptcy, no trustee. So in 1999, there should not have been a presidential election held. The U.S. Congress should have been shut down, the Senate should have been shut down, everybody should have been fired, and we should have held a new constitutional convention and resubstantiated the entire government from the ground up. And they never told the American people about any of it. Now, with the end of the American Revolution, the United States didn't have a strategic metals contract in place. Okay, we weren't allowed to print and mint our own coinage, so we had to borrow it from these guys, from the Rothschilds and London City, authorized by the Crown, because the Crown has a strategic metals contract in place, and that's what we've been utilizing. In 1933, with the Great Depression, actually 1929, is when the beginning of the third and final international bankruptcy had started, or the end of the second had come to an end. Because we were borrowing money from these guys over here, we're now in usury with this system. Okay, so that is how we're captured in usury with these guys over here. We're using their money. We're not allowed to make or create our own. And as a matter of fact, we're borrowing it and paying it back with interest in hard, natural assets. Okay, all of this is going somewhere, okay? This is all going back to David Windmiller and Russell J. Gould and what they have done to the planet that everybody needs to be made aware of. But before we get into that, you have to understand what it was they ran headlong into that they had no idea was going on the planet. Okay, that pretty much stopped what they were doing right in its tracks, and vice versa. Okay, so this is where the banking warfare and the warfare against the United States really kicks off. Back in 1933, Roosevelt was in office, and a Nazi coup inspired and led by Gerald McGuire, backed by Prescott Bush, J.P. Morgan, Remington, and Goodyear, were trying to get Roosevelt out of office. And what they did was they tried to elicit the help of General Smedley Butler of the United States Marine Corps in an effort to help them get Roosevelt out of office. They figured that with Butler's influence over the American soldiers, that he could assemble 500,000 men and help them get Roosevelt out.
Let me warn you, and let me warn the nation against the smooth evasion that says, of course we believe these things. We believe in social security. We believe in work for the unemployed. We believe in saving homes. Cross our hearts and hope to die. We believe in all these things. But we do not like the way the present administration is doing them. Just turn them over to us. We will do all of them. We will do more of them. We will do them better. And most important of all, the doing of them will not cost anybody anything.
Thank God for Smedley Butler. He blew the whistle, and their plan failed. However, these corporate heads, J.P. Morgan, Remington, Goodyear, and the others, were never indicted for this treasonous act. And so it continued on in the shadows. From there, it's been one long-range orchestrated event to get these guys into the White House. A few years later, Eisenhower comes into office. And under his watch, the CIA gets set up. And Eisenhower then gave a masterful speech on a conspiracy that he was worried about. And he told the American people, keep an eye on the military-industrial complex because he saw it as extremely dangerous.
Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration.
Under Eisenhower's watch, the Five-Star Trust was set up by the CIA. The Five-Star Trust consisted of 5 top men, those being George Bush Sr., Richard Armitage, General Edward Lansdale, William Colby, and General Robert L. Ferreira. Those were the 5 guys that ran the Five-Star Trust for the CIA. Now what the Five-Star Trust was, their objective was to set up the largest drug and money laundering system the world had ever seen. And it was called Operation Studebaker and Operation Clean Broom, which was the money laundering systems into the operation. And that was ran out of Kentucky by Marion Horn, a gentleman named Marion Horn. The main objective of this operation was to create money for the CIA so they wouldn't have to go and ask Congress for money. Doing so might divulge plans the CIA had going on. So they developed the largest drug and money laundering system the world has ever seen. The objective of which was to set up a drug running operation and then put all the money into a conglomeration of banks set up by the Rothschilds and the 13 banking families known as the Five-Star Trust. That is Lucifer's Sustainable Development Fund. Okay, that's Lucifer's piggy bank. I'm just going to say it. So, once this all got set up, Kennedy came into office. And Kennedy warned us of a massive conspiracy that scared him so bad, he created U.S. Special Forces.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
and he began working for the people to try to get the Federal Reserve out of here and get us back on a silver standard.
And that is, we can have honest, solid currency, like what President Kennedy was doing 10 days before he was assassinated.
Unfortunately, John F. Kennedy was murdered for his efforts. Eventually, George Bush Sr. becomes head of the CIA. And Reagan takes office. And sees this whole thing going on and warns the American people about it. He made several speeches warning the American people about the same thing Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy did.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement, and this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better red than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of it. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn they're spirits, not animals. He said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
He was talking about Christianity and how if we ever became an atheistic country or a socialistic dictatorship under an atheistic regime, the United States would go down. So he tried to do everything in his power he could to stop what was going on. And George Bush Sr. tried 5 times to assassinate Kennedy. That's all been declassified. Sometime after that, George Bush Sr. becomes President of the United States. Now, this was a long-range warfare objective to get here, and they finally got there. Once this drug and money laundering system was all set up, they were going to then empower the United Nations to institute a global tax on everyone. At this particular juncture, by then, there is $230 million quadrillion in the Sustainable Development Fund that these guys are using as a black ops shadow government bank account. If they install a global tax on everyone in the world, how much bigger is this bank account going to get? At this point, the CIA was just going to be used to continue to go in and soften other countries up in a New World Order effort that was being launched out of the White House.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The long-range objective. Now, this was all heading for the event horizon year of 1999. That's where this is all going. This is an event horizon year for the country and for the globe. Because once George Bush Sr. got in to be President of the United States, he saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming, and he knew that the U.S. Constitution would dissolve, and the agreement between us and Great Britain would be dissolved at that point, or voided and gone. The U.S. Constitution was going to be gone. So he went back to the Crown, told his cousins what was going on, and they knighted him. The plan was to resubstantiate the U.S. Constitution so the king could still continue to oversee the international affairs in relation to shipping and commerce of the United States, and the New World Order would be launched out of Washington, D.C., and like I said, a global tax would be instituted by the United Nations, and their plans would be fulfilled. But before they can do that, they have to bring all the banks in under one banking system, under the Rothschilds banking system. So, the next objective, the Middle East. They got to go into the Middle East and get the oil. Why? Because there's only 9 banks left in the world that are not ran by the Rothschilds, 7 of which are in the Middle East. So if they go in and steal the oil, then the banks have nothing to create a banking system off of. They collapse, and then they got to borrow money from here. The warfare is real simple.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
After that, they got to go after Chavez in Venezuela. That's the last vestige. Then their plans really will be complete. However, in 1999, their plans were foiled. Like I said, this was an event horizon year. They weren't the only ones that saw this thing coming to an end. A simple review at the high school level, high school education, clearly details the fact that Great Britain and the Vatican had gotten together and had decided that the United States would never come to allow a one world global dictator to rule their country. And everybody knows that the Vatican has always had an agreement with the Nazis. Not so much Germany itself, but the Nazi party up there in Germany, operating out of Germany. They tried to set up a one world global dictatorship under Hitler a long time ago.
We are talking about the biggest thuggery of all, and that is the Jesuits in the Vatican. I always thought that the CIA was the problem and the other intelligence agencies. Guess what? There's a grand intelligence agency that the Vatican puts out, and all of those other crooks are operating under the Vatican intelligence agency.
This was a long-range effort by these guys to come up from the rear and accomplish this objective. Now, the plan of the CIA with the setup of the Five-Star Trust was that the 5 top gentlemen, or I should say men, that were going to run the Five-Star Trust for the CIA were going to take turns being the director of the CIA. So those 5 guys could stay in command and control of this entire operation. The objective is to set up a one world global dictatorship with Lucifer at the top, running the United Nations. And this is the piggy bank they're going to utilize to achieve that objective. But thank goodness, in 1999, as I said, this all revolved around the international bankruptcy of the United States, which, thank goodness, left the Washington, D.C. postal location open for capture on November 2nd, 1999 for 18 days. There was an 18-day period in there that the Crown was going to have to vacate the position and the post office would be open, and the United States would no longer have the ability to conduct international trade and commerce, hence the Florida Chads. That's because in 1999, the U.S. Constitution had come to an end and was closed out with the end of the third and final international bankruptcy. With that, they had the Amero set, the American European dollar, and they were about to surrender the United States back over to Great Britain. However, in 1999, during that 18-day vacancy, a miracle had taken place. Now, anyone who's listened to Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Reagan make their speeches will know that these gentlemen have been warning us of a group of people on this planet who are literally conspiring together in an effort to try to get the United States military to go to war for them in an effort to set this one world global government up. Okay, and that's what they were warning us about. They said, we're a nation of peace. We have to remain and stay a nation of peace. There's a group of people out there who are trying to get us to surrender everything over to them so that they can utilize our military to go and achieve their world objectives. And that they were going to utilize or create some fanciful event that would allow them then to do that. And that's what we had with the Twin Towers event and the 9/11 episode. So they actually got what they finally wanted. That was an orchestrated event. There was never any terrorists, and terrorism itself is a fraud. You cannot have a war where there is no enemy. You don't have an enemy. Show me the enemy. There is no enemy. The enemies are, or the enemy is, anyone who does not go along with their new world order effort. That's who they're targeting, and that's who their terrorists are. This is a very simple warfare effort to follow. This entire soap opera is very easy to follow. The next thing they want are your guns, and they're going to come hard for them. They're going to come hard for guns here in America. That is the one thing that is stopping them from taking absolute, total, tactical command and control of this nation. And if they ever come for your guns, that is when you will have surrendered everything. They've already attacked your freedom of your right to choose, your freedom of speech, your freedom of the press, and now they're onto the Second Amendment. They are coming for our guns, but they will not get them. anyone signing on to that kind of legislation, Nancy Pelosi being number one, wants to surrender your borders, take your weapons, force you to buy health care. These are your New World Order extremists, okay? These guys are all working for Lucifer. They want a one world global dictator at the top. Who is it? It's Lucifer. We all know it. Biblical prophecy. Now, prior to 1999, there were two gentlemen who were working to get themselves out of the Masonic global government system that we've all been enslaved to through the birth certificate system. Those two men were Russell J. Gould and David Wynn Miller, or Russell-J. Gould and David-Wynn Miller. David-Wynn Miller was the one who broke the mathematical interface on math and grammar. And here's the equation for that. Anybody that's been out there and studying this, I'm not going to go too far into. Russell J. Gould was the individual who then imparted the now time aspect into this grammatical construct, thereby giving it its own jurisdiction. So at this point, they knew that they had a whole new system of grammar that the world had never seen, that now, being set up the way it was, needed to be utilized to create an entirely new government system off of. So they had to go all the way back to where the crown derives its authorities. They went back all the way back into the Masonic books, and we'll just throw one out there: The Secret Teachings of Manly P. Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages. They went back and they syntaxed this book and then rewrote it in this quantum construct, in this now time grammatical quantum construct. And they did that with all of the books, all of the Masonic books that are utilized to substantiate the Crown's authorizations here in the world, thereby giving their system its own venue. They've created an entirely new federal government system for the entire world to now join with. And it is a global federal government system, and it is based in truth. The entire system is based on mathematically certifiable grammar. It has its own elemental chart and periodic tables that one unwinds, creates a mathematical fact forward and backward in both directions. When this elemental chart and periodic table unwinds itself, it creates a affinity loop, or a figure 8, thereby validating itself forward and backwards, just like the grammatical construct does. This thing was genius. Knowing what these men had at their fingertips, all they needed was the right time and place in history to launch this thing and take the greatest leap of faith ever taken by any two gentlemen ever recorded in the history of this planet. Once this thing was all set up, the books that they had syntaxed, they had filed with the Vatican and the NSA and several other locations on planet Earth. And the Vatican had been studying it for 5 years prior to what eventually took place in 1999. Russell J. Gould, with the help of David Wynn Miller, in 1999 saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming. And Russell, knowing what was about to take place here, ran down to the United Nations and asked the United Nations if they had a copyright and patent on the Title IV flag. Knowing that it didn't matter if they did or they didn't, the contract would have been found to have been in grammatical fraud and grammatical error. So he rewrote the copyright and patent for the Title IV flag for the United States, because it was about to be surrendered back over to Great Britain along with the country at the end of the third and final international bankruptcy. So he takes off up to the United Nations with the Title IV flag in tow and legs this whole government system in. And there at the United Nations, he was declared a sovereign. In the process, he had just taken down the entire old monarch system, because once they reestablished those Masonic books, they had to resubstantiate all of them in a quantum grammar construct, thereby disqualifying the old system completely from the bloodlines on. And in that effort, have set this entire global government system up for the world. Russ then turns back around, and during that 18-day vacancy that post office was open, the king had to vacate due to international banking law for 18 days. Russell legs back in down here at the post office in Washington, D.C., taking tactical command and control of the United States and Canada, because that post office has always been attached to the D.C. location. And in doing so, he just brought to an end the New World Order effort to surrender the United States back over to the Crown, utilize the United Nations to install a global tax, because no one has a charter to exist anymore as a corporation under his authority. Everything has been disqualified. It's over. So prior to 1999, Russell J. Gould had rewritten a new U.S. Constitution, a Bill of Rights, a Declaration of Independence. He had resubstantiated the charter for all of the federal municipalities. He had captured the flag for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard, and resubstantiated the entire construct in a quantum global effort, or quantum global manner. Thereby, in 1999, when he moved into the Washington, D.C. postal location, taking tactical command and control of the United States and the rest of the North American continent, the New World Order and the Crown didn't have authorization to send our military to war for them after 9/11 had occurred, because they didn't have the authorization to do so. They had been disqualified. It was over. But you got to remember, this was an act of patriotism on his part. This is a patriot for the country. This guy is from Wyoming. Okay? This guy's a patriot to the country. He saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming. He knew we were about to be surrendered back over to Great Britain, along with the flag, and it would hang like this in a surrendered manner. And he did his duty as a patriot. He stepped in where he needed to step in, and he saved the country and the flag from being surrendered. And he's still holding on to that Title IV flag for the people of this country and safeguarding it for the people of this country. Now, even more astounding was that prior to 1999 and him taking tactical command and control of Washington, D.C., he had built a brand new banking system. That's what this is. That is the banking system he put together. And at the same time as he legged into Washington, D.C., taking tactical command and control of the entire country, he legged this banking system in at the U.S. Treasury Department. So now we can get rid of the Fed. The Fed can go bye-bye. Shouldn't have been here since 1999. Once the charter expired and the bankruptcy had come to an end, the Federal Reserve did not have the authorization at that point to continue to print money for the United States, and the IRS was actually kicked out of the country because that was the collection agency for the debt. Well, if there's no more debt, there's no more need for an IRS. As a sovereign, he has a strategic metals contract that is based upon his elemental chart and his periodic table, giving him the authorization to print and mint his own coinage. This is the first time in the history of the country that this country actually has the power to print and mint its own coinage. We do not have to use the strategic metals contract of the old monarch. It's over. This was an act of patriotism. This was all due to the circumstances that revolved around the third and final international bankruptcy of this country coming to an end. And thank God we were saved. So after legging back in as Postmaster General here for the United States, he then proceeded to go around the world and reauthorize everything under his authority that would authorize or substantiate this system in its totality. So he had to go all the way back to the International Admiralty and Maritime Organization and reauthorize it under the Quantum Authority. He had to go back to the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland, and reauthorize it under his authority. He had to go back to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures and reauthorize it under his authority, because he had just destroyed all banking and chemistry on planet Earth with this elemental chart and this periodic table in association with this system of weights and measures in conjunction with the grammar. He had to go back into the International Patent Office because this all has to be patented. So it disqualified all the old patents on planet Earth all the way back to the very beginning. So he had to resubstantiate all that. And all of that needs to be resubstantiated. Everybody's patent on all of their products now have to be resubstantiated in this quantum manner, or under this quantum global construct and system. That way, their patents can't be harvested, stolen by the old system any longer. They've all been saved. Everything has been saved. But he had to go around the planet and set this whole thing back up under his authority, all these locations. And what they ended up doing when the United Nations said, well, okay, but what land do you choose? They said, him and Dave said, they choose the land of the courts during the time of the contract. Why? Because that is where the courts, or all the contracts, are defended, is in the courts. Well, that's why Dave keeps talking about we own the land of the courts, because their system just took down the old system, and the old system was enforced in the courts. Well, this system now rules the courts. So if you bring your old grammatical system in there and your old contracts into the courts, and they're not done properly, correctly, and truthfully, using the quantum grammar construct, they are disqualified and nullified as grammar fraud and bank fraud, all of it, across the board. Now, after coming back into the United States, after having run this gamut, he came back into the United States, and when he did, the 5-Star Trust guys grabbed him up. Bush and the boys grabbed him up and literally beat the living shit out of this guy in an effort to get him to surrender that flag. These are the guys who have swept this all under the rug and have proceeded to move forward in their attempt to surrender the United States back over to the New World Order, or to Great Britain, finish constructing their New World Order, go into the Middle East, steal the oil. They're heading back down to Venezuela to get Chavez out of there so they can get his banking system closed down. And once they have it all under wraps, they will then present the mark of the beast to everyone. However, Russell J. Gould did not surrender the flag, and he did not surrender his position. They took him into court, and they literally beat the hell out of this guy on a couple of different occasions, and he won. And the Navy was behind him and supporting him all the way. We don't know what happened to that contingency. We can't speculate. We do have a couple of ideas. However, after 12 years of these guys not wanting to play ball and just do things correctly and move forward with this entire new global government system, Russell J. Gould, seeing that the Benjamin Franklin Post Office had now come out of bankruptcy, and it had come out of bankruptcy in 1999, right? But nobody remembered it. Nobody saw it. So what he did was, when he came back into Washington, D.C. and filed the flag in there and legged in as the Postmaster General for the United States and as the new Postmaster General of the world, he rewrote a new U.S. Constitution between his government and ours. And it's the same version of the one we had with Great Britain, only this one doesn't have the 1 million laws attached to it that finally were created by the Congress and the Senate in relation to this system, because we know there's always been two governments operating here, the King of Great Britain's and ours. That's why you get the two-party system, right? The Democratic and the Republican. So he rewrote the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's still standing. The Declaration of Independence is still standing. And because they didn't want to move forward with it and wanted to keep going forward with this New World Order surrender effort, in the year 2012, and on the date December 21st, 2012, end of the Mayan calendar, he legs back in down here at the Philadelphia Post Office in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Benjamin Franklin Postal Court, or Post Office, and reopen the entire U.S. government back up for the people with a new U.S. Constitution, the same Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and it's all been quantized into this mathematical, grammatical fact. He saved the United States from surrender and takeover. He has saved the planet from a New World Order effort to conquer us. He has saved the planet from a New World Order effort under one man, a global dictator we all know as Lucifer, and has stopped them from being able to present the mark of the beast to all of us and attach us to this banking system as slaves. It's all been disqualified. It's all been shut down. It's over. The victory is ours. This is Our Lady of Victory. This is our victory. It's just being kept from the people of the United States and the people of the world, and they're just not telling you the story in this manner because they don't want you to know about this system. And they said every time it pops up, they are going to ridicule the shit out of it in every manner possible, because they said the American people are too stupid to believe, let alone understand any of this information. Now what he has done is he has purified the whore of Babylon and prepared her as the bride of Christ. And now he's got one foot in the sea, which is the Admiralty Maritime jurisdiction, which was held by the King of Great Britain up in Washington, D.C., and he has the civil jurisdiction law of the land, the terra firma the Admiralty footing and the terra firma footing, and he's bridging the gap, rapturing you out of the land of the dead, where you're once considered to be missing or presumed to be dead or lost at sea with your birth certificate system, ships you in through the Washington, D.C. postal location, out through the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania postal location, civil jurisdiction law of the land, where the blood testifies to the life, and you are brought back into the land of the living and saved. Your soul is saved. Your country is saved. You are saved. This is Our Lady of Victory. Now you got to remember, the New World Order wasn't waiting for God to send down the seventh angel to fix everything. Right? These guys are waiting for Lucifer to stand up and give everyone the mark of the beast. So what happened after 1999? What you had happen there was a private corporation move into Washington, D.C. to run the government for the people of the United States, and it was under the command and control of George Bush Jr., who then declared war on the Middle East after they dropped the trade centers in New York. This was an orchestrated warfare plan by this group, the same group that started here. Okay, this was the same group of folks that initiated this bombing. If there were ever any weapons of mass destruction, they would have used the weapon of mass destruction to bomb the World Trade Centers. They wouldn't have flown a plane into it or into them. So these guys ultimately got what they wanted. They got tactical command and control of the militaries to go fight their wars so they could set up their one world global government. The next administration that moved in 8 years later, once again, a private corporation. The first corporation was identifying itself with a 3x5 boat flag. It's not registered with the United Nations as the Title IV flag is, or any other flags around the world are. They're much longer. Okay, they're coffin flags. They're long enough to cover a coffin. The 3x5 boat flag is not. It's a replica of the Title IV flag. 8 years after this guy was in office, a second administration moves in to run the country, and they've got a 2.5 by 2.5 size flag, Obama. This is a Ken and Barbie flag. It's not registered with any country in the world, anywhere. You could buy it at Toys R Us. And as a matter of fact, I don't even think they sell them there. So this corporation comes in and says, yes, we can. Yes, we can what? Force you to buy health care? That removes your freedom of choice. So now they've attacked your freedom of choice, your freedom of speech, your freedom of the press, and now they're coming after your guns, your Second Amendment. They're just chipping away at it. Everything you guys are seeing broadcast on the television is a psychological warfare effort. The television is still registered by the FCC as an entertainment device. Nothing coming out of it has to be real or even is real. That's why you hear Trump today saying it's all fake news. Everything you guys are seeing is what these guys are broadcasting that they want you to follow. That is their global narrative. Okay? The global narrative is there's a war on terror. You can't have a war on fear. Fear, terror, spookiness. Okay? You can't have a war where there's no known enemy. The folks over there in the Middle East are just trying to simply fight off a foreign invasion and kick us out of their country. These guys are just trying to go in, crush the banks. They got to steal the oil out of there using the Caspian Sea pipelines. That's the overall objective. And that is their global, that's the global narrative. Well, in psychological operations or psychological warfare, tactical command and control of the global narrative is what we strive for. However, this is the global narrative now. This is our victory. This is our Lady of Victory, guys. It has defeated all of this across the board. We don't have to follow none of it. We've got to get these guys out of power here in the country. They don't have a flag. They don't have authorization. They don't have a charter that's been authorized correctly by the new Federal Postmaster General of the world. It's all been taken down, yet they still continue to move forward with their surrender back over to Great Britain or to the New World Order, this New World Order effort to create a one world global government with one person at the top. We all know it's Lucifer. They want your guns next. That is it. You're going to see it broadcast on the televisions. Anything they can drum up, any story whatsoever in relation to guns or a gun killing or a murder or anything, they are going to whip any little thing they can into a national frenzy. This, again, is psychological warfare. They're taking anything they possibly can and spinning it into a national issue, as though the whole nation is crying out, oh, take our guns, we shouldn't have guns. That's what they want you to think is being cried out for here in this country, when indeed it is not. It is being broadcast out of the televisions. It is a psychological warfare effort, and that is the last vestige. That's all they need here. And once you give that up, you will give up everything. Everything you've got, they will take it from you. You see the people of Great Britain? What do they have? Nothing. They have absolutely nothing. That is what you will have if they come and take your guns. You need to wisen up.
It really all depends on whether people understand that the media that is giving them disinformation is owned by the Federal Reserve and this system of control. And it's really up to humanity to realize that they're being hoodwinked, that when they turn on the news and they get the news from the mainstream media, they're just being fed propaganda.
This is the very thing Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, and President Ronald Reagan warned the United States about. Do not surrender. Never surrender. Never surrender your beliefs. Never surrender your morality. Never surrender your Christian beliefs and your faiths. Never surrender. We are a nation of peace. And this entire system was defeated through peace. Thank God. And thank God for the seventh angel for bringing it down. You know, there's a lot of people in our country who claim to be heroes. And there's a lot of men out there, women out there that serve in the armed forces that are heroes. We never should have gone to war in the Middle East. It was whipped up by a New World Order crew. Well, now it's time for some real heroes to actually step up to the plate and defend this entire system. And that's what we're looking for. Where are you?